it's a big one. Washington will look to maintain their perfect season when they travel to Corvallis to take on the 8-2 feisty Beavers. Washington obviously controls its own destiny. Win this game, win the Apple Cup, win the Pac-12 championship. Not only are they Pac-12 championships, but they are going to the college football playoff. Would be their second appearance. This line, Oregon State has taken some money. Oregon State's now up to 2.5-point favorite. Over under totals up to about 62.5. I agreed with the money coming in on Oregon State. I played Oregon State. Would play them up into 2.5. Look, this Washington team has been flirting with disaster for weeks. I mean, Arizona State should have lost that game if they had a kicker. You should have lost to Oregon, but you get all the fourth down variants. You're in battles with Stanford. USC games back and forth, changes on a fourth down and fumble at the end of the first half. I mean, it's been just, hey, we're getting out of Dodge. The offense is still great. You could get a little bit more McMillan. You could get some McMillan at receiver. They're going to move the ball through the air. Oregon State's defense, metrically, they're actually been, pretty decent against the pass, but they have really good safeties. I mean, I love their safeties. Their corners aren't that great. That's the biggest weakness, in my opinion, on their defense. So they're not going to really be able to stick with the Washington receivers on the outside. So I think Washington will move the ball. On the other side, I think Oregon State, which has arguably the best offensive line in the country, and I think they're getting their star center back this week. They have two amazing running backs in Damian Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick. They can run the ball on anybody, and they're going up against one of the worst run defenses in the country. You look at this Washington defense. I mean, some of the stats, I mean, it's bleak. They are bottom 6 nationally in stuff rate, line yards, and success rate on rush plays.
Yep.
And the Beavers, number 2 in the country in rushing success rate. So I just think Oregon State's going to be able to move the ball down the field. So I think both teams are going to be able to move the ball. Where is the difference? And by the way, for what it's worth, Oregon State, 15th in the country in passing downs explosiveness. So I think they're going to be able to move the chains, bring the safeties up. And the Washington defense just isn't the same, especially that they've had some injuries at safety and other places. They just don't have a lot of depth on defense. And then I think Oregon State off play action is going to hit a couple deep shots here. But I think the biggest difference, and maybe I should let you just do this because I'm going to sound like you, is going to come in finishing drives. Oregon State is elite in both on offense and defense. Offense makes sense. They can run the ball as well as anybody. They can finish drives in a number of ways, and they're always going to finish in with touchdowns. And against this Washington defense, shouldn't be any different. And then Washington, they're still very good, but their offense just isn't as elite when the field shrinks because there's just not that much space, and they're running the ball a little bit better. And then on defense, they've struggled in that department. To put some numbers to it, points per opportunity, Oregon State 6th on offense, 23rd on defense. Washington 13th on offense, 68th on defense. I think that's the difference. I think Oregon State gets more touchdowns in the red zone than Washington. Look for a couple plays by my guy Oladapo, that's their safety, who I love. Him and Arnold are a really good pair back there. But I think both teams move the ball pretty consistently. I think it comes down to finishing drives. And you know what the trump card is? Corvallis.
There we go.
I couldn't believe this. Oregon State, over the past 3 seasons, not only are they far and away the most profitable team at home, they are, including FCS games, 17-1 against the spread in their past 18 home games, covering by 10 points per game. Give me the Corvallis Magic. Washington goes down. Give me the Beavs. Do you agree?
Can't even call it an upset because Oregon State is favored, which everybody on TV is going to say it's an upset. It's not. No, I mean, you nailed it all except for one thing. There's one other aspect working in Oregon State's favor, but no, you nailed it, man. Reeser has been a house of horrors for opponents, especially considering last year they chopped the damn field in half and only 25,000 fit on one side, and Oregon State still covered everything. No, so
they were playing with like their third string quarterback.
Yeah. So this is a really tough place to play. And I think one other thing, there is precipitation coming in, 70% chance of precip coming in. The wind should be below 10 miles an hour. So I'm not really worried about that. But when you get wet field conditions, generally will help the team that is running and not the team that is throwing. And so that should be Oregon State. So a little slight note there for them. But you're right. This ground game of Oregon State is dominating teams. Damian Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick, and DJ Uiagalelei are unstoppable. I wouldn't be surprised if they average 8 yards per carry here. And you say, that sounds a little high. Well, Oregon State trails LSU as the best rushing team in the nation. Just put it this way. Utah, with the troubles they've had outside of Jackson trying to find someone to run the ball, Utah posted double the national average in success rate in 27 rushing attempts against Washington. Stuckey mentioned all the bad metrics that Washington has as far as defending the rush. They're bad. They're worse. When you go into the run concepts, it looks even better for Oregon State here. But the more important aspect is what happens down around the goal line, which you touched on with finishing drives. If you go into red zone, Washington's defense is 115th in red zone rushing touchdowns. So I broke it up. I was like, let's get past finishing drives in red zone. Let's look at how well you're defending the rush, because that's what's coming for you from Oregon State in the red zone. 115th and rushing touchdowns allowed. Oregon State, second nationally in rushing red zone rushing TDs. So it's such a bad combination. Washington has to create explosives through the air. They're going to have to take advantage of the Oregon State defense. You mentioned the corners. As you mentioned, the corners are a problem for Oregon State, but missed tackles are also a big part of those corners. So do you double up on the outside, not worry about Jalen McMillan in the slots and the crossers over the middle? I think you're exactly right, Stuck. There's way too many advantages for the team that can run the ball, control the clock, limit possessions on the other side for a team that is finesse and just likes to throw the ball. Their best wide receiver runs slot over the middle and not on the outside against the weak part of Oregon State. Precip in there. I think Washington's will be able to create a couple of explosives to the outside. That's the way that they score. When you consider what Oregon State does defensively in the red zone and in finishing drives beyond the 40 when Washington has scoring opportunities, this is all Oregon State. It's probably going to shock everybody, the national media that's on our TV. It won't shock this podcast at all.